Let me throw something out there, and I know it might ruffle a few feathers. After a certain age, you're no longer useful to society. It's not always spoken aloud, but it lingers like smoke in the air, in how fewer people ask for your opinion, in how your stories are politely smiled at but rarely truly heard, in how the world quietly nudges you to the sidelines. And if you felt that, even for a moment, you're not imagining things. That belief hurts. It cuts deeper than we expect, because it plants a seed of doubt in the most sacred place. Am I still needed? Do I still matter? But the Dharma, the timeless teachings of the Buddha, offers a very different answer. So before we go any further, let's pause right here and say, welcome, dear friend, to another episode from Buddhist Wisdom for the Elderly, a space where growing old isn't a problem to solve, but a path to awaken. Here we laugh at impermanence, bow to sorrow, sip tea with compassion, and remind each other that this chapter is not the end of the story. It's the unfolding of its deepest truth. Because from the Buddhist view, this stage of life is not decline. It is refinement. Not retreat, but return. Return to presence, to simplicity, to the wisdom that no longer needs applause to feel real. That's why in today's video, we're going to walk through 8 essential, but often overlooked pillars of support in aging. Not just practical tips, but profound inner teachings that will help you feel more grounded, awake, and deeply alive. And here's the thing. You may not even realize how vital these pillars are until one of them slips away. So stay with us, because pillar number 5, the strength no one sees, might be the one your heart has quietly been waiting for. It's about emotional resilience, the inner strength that allows you to sit with grief without collapsing, to remain open-hearted even when the world forgets to be kind. It's what lets you suffer without being shattered. And if you've ever thought, I should be fine by now, or no one sees what I'm carrying, this one is for you. So if this message speaks to you, like this video, and subscribe to help our small but mighty Sangha reach our first 1,000 subscribers. It may seem small, but your support is the wind beneath this practice. It keeps us going. It tells us, yes, this matters. Please keep sharing. All right, the kettle's hot, the cushion is ready, the heart is open. Let's begin. Pillar 1, the secret power of giving. Now this one, my friend, is the heart of the whole thing. Because after life has tossed you around like socks in a dryer, after the careers, the heartbreaks, the funerals, the birthdays where nobody remembered, the sagging body parts and sagging social calendars, there's still one thing that keeps your heart from calcifying into a grumpy old walnut. Compassion. And not the Hallmark card kind. Not the, oh, bless their heart kind you mutter while secretly judging someone. I'm talking about the kind of compassion that gets up off the couch or stays on the couch but still manages to change someone's life. Let me introduce you to Darlene. Darlene is 87, legally blind, and runs on peppermint tea and sheer force of personality. Her voice still sounds like a jazz record, warm with a little crackle. After her husband died and her eyesight took a nosedive, she found herself wondering, well, now what? What good am I with half my sight and no one to argue with over what's for dinner? She'd sit in her recliner, wrapped in the silence, feeling like a story that had already ended. Then one day, she heard through the grapevine, really just a neighbor's teenage daughter, that the girl was in trouble, scared, pregnant, lonely. So Darlene, in all her grandmotherly glory, invited her over for tea. No lectures, no moral panic. Just 2 mugs, a warm silence, and a listening heart. The girl came back the next week, then the week after that, and something in Darlene began to stir. She started calling local shelters, not asking for help, but offering it. She couldn't see well enough to write, but she could speak, so she dictated letters of encouragement to women she'd never met. Volunteers read them out loud like tiny lifelines. She became a lighthouse with Wi-Fi, all from the same recliner where she once sat feeling invisible. Now in Buddhist circles, there's a lovely word for this, karuna. It's compassion with feet, not just feeling bad for someone, not just lighting a candle and hoping the world figures itself out. Karuna is when suffering wakes something tender in you, and that tenderness moves, not because you're trying to save anybody, but because love becomes the only logical response. Science, of course, has finally caught up. Turns out that when elders give their time, wisdom, and kindness, they don't just lift others, they boost their own immune systems, lower depression, and lengthen their lives. Basically, compassion is the original multivitamin. But forget the research for a second. Here's the deeper truth. You're still a blessing. You are not some dusty relic from the past, waiting for the world to remember your greatness. You are a living, breathing library of love. And somebody out there is starving for just one sentence from your pages. Your presence is medicine. Your voice is needed. Your still soft heart is a map for the rest of us. So if you've got time, and I know you do, share it. Call someone, write something. Listen deeply, encourage gently. Pour your compassion like a cup of tea. Warm, healing, no sugar needed. Because in this mad, beautiful, aching world, we don't need more opinions. We need more elders who remember how to love without needing anything in return. And guess what? That's you. Pillar 2. Why you can't afford to rely on love alone. You know, when we're younger, we often carry this warm little belief that if we just love our people enough, our kids, our spouse, our friends, they'll be there when we need them most. It's sort of like we think we're planting love trees, and when we're older, they'll bear fruit and shade and a pension. But one of life's quieter teachings is this: sometimes those love trees grow sideways, or they get caught in their own storms. And when you need shelter, you realize you're standing out in the rain, alone, without an umbrella or a poncho. I want to tell you about someone. Let's call him Harold. Harold, 73. A kind, soft-spoken man who spent most of his life giving. He helped his daughter through law school, co-signed a mortgage for his son, and bailed his brother out of a business deal gone bad, twice. He never said no, not once. Not because he was rich, he just believed in showing up. Then came the diagnosis. Not a dramatic movie scene one, just a quiet thing with a lot of medical bills and not enough Medicare. So Harold did what most of us would do. He turned to the people he'd helped, expecting the karmic wheel to roll on back. But life doesn't always follow your script. His daughter had twins and was juggling bills of her own. His son had lost his job. His brother had vanished somewhere between Florida and a new girlfriend. And Harold, generous, open-hearted Harold, found himself facing bills he couldn't pay, looking around and thinking, wasn't love supposed to be enough? Now, the Buddha, wise fellow, never wore shoes. He taught that clinging is suffering. And Harold, bless him, had been clinging to an old idea. That family is always your safety net. But nets tear, and sometimes we're the ones who have to weave a new one. With our own hands. Financial independence isn't about becoming some Wall Street wizard in your golden years. It's about something far more sacred. Peace of mind. It's about being able to choose your life, not beg for it. It's freedom, plain and simple. And here's the real twist of Harold's story. When he stopped expecting others to rescue him, he found something he didn't know he had: his own strength. He got help from a senior financial counselor at the community center. Downsized to a cozy little apartment filled with sunlight and peace. Started a garden, sold the classic car he never drove. He stopped giving money out of guilt and started saying something magical: "Let me think about it." And slowly, Harold began to smile again. Not the everything's fine smile, but the real kind. The kind that comes from knowing your ship may be small, but by God, it's yours, and it floats. The Buddha also said, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. And maybe Harold didn't quote him directly, but he lived it. He stopped seeking peace through his kids' success or anyone else's approval. He found it in his own quiet control. So ask yourself, gently, kindly, do I have enough to stand on my own 2 feet? Am I waiting for someone else to catch me when I fall? And if the answers are uncomfortable, good. That means they're real. Because this first pillar, it's not about money. It's about sovereignty. It's about being free, not from life's challenges, but from the fear of them. And freedom, my friend, even in old age, especially in old age, is priceless. Pillar 3, your body's still listening. I once heard someone say, aging is like being slowly burgled by someone very polite. And I think they were onto something. First it's your knees, then your back, then your short-term memory packs a bag and goes on a weekend trip without telling you. One day, you try to stand up from a couch that didn't look that low, and suddenly you understand why turtles don't rush anything. Let me tell you about Eileen. She's 69 now, with soft white hair and the kind of smile that makes strangers open up in the grocery store line. She used to dance, salsa, waltz, even a little swing. Not professionally, just for joy. But after retiring, the dancing stopped. She figured, I've earned the right to sit down. And sit she did. On the couch, in the car, at her grandkids' soccer games, in front of the TV. Until one winter morning, she slipped in her kitchen. No broken bones, but she couldn't get up. Not right away. It took her 10 minutes, a kitchen chair, and a fair bit of humility. That day, she looked at herself in the mirror and saw something she hadn't wanted to admit. I've been slipping long before I slipped. Now, the Buddha wasn't into weightlifting. He never ran marathons. But he understood the body. He called it the vehicle for awakening. And if you've ever tried to meditate with a bad back or indigestion, you know. Spiritual insight gets tricky when your knees hurt. Eileen decided she wasn't going to let her body become a prison. She started small, stretching in the morning, walking in the evening. She joined a gentle yoga class at the community center. No headstands, just breath and movement, and a room full of people who also made that old man grunt when they bent over. What changed wasn't just her strength, it was her spirit. Because when your body moves again, your soul follows. She still had arthritis, she still got tired. But now she felt capable. And when she danced again, just a little barefoot in the kitchen with her grandkids, she cried. Because it reminded her, I'm still here. I still belong in this body. We often treat health like an emergency. We wait until it fails. But what if we treated it like a garden? Something we tend to gently, daily, not with panic, but with love. You don't have to run marathons. You don't have to juice kale. You just have to stay in relationship with your body, because it's the one companion that's been with you through everything. The heartbreaks, the births, the holidays, the losses. This body has carried you, even when you were too tired to notice. And now it's asking for your care in return. Don't wait until it breaks to listen. Move, breathe, stretch, rest. Laugh deeply. Feed it something that didn't come from a drive-through window. Treat it like an old friend who's trying their best, because this body of yours, it's not just meat and bones. It's your temple. It's your vehicle. It's the home you live in every single day. And if you love it, it will love you back, even with the creaks, even with the extra pounds, even with knees that sound like popcorn when you stand up. It's never too late to say, thank you, old friend. Let's keep going together. Pillar 4, clear mind, kind heart. If your body is the house, then your mind, well, it's the garden. And like any garden, if you don't pull the weeds now and then, you'll wake up one morning and find your tomatoes hiding under a thicket of, where did I put my glasses? Let's be honest, after a certain age, the brain starts playing a little game called now you see it, now you don't. Words vanish mid-sentence. You walk into a room with great purpose, only to stare at the walls and wonder if the furniture can give you a clue. And names get slippery, like trying to hold a wet soap bar in the bathtub of your mind. But hear me out, this isn't failure. This is reorganizing. The brain's been carrying a lot. It's had decades of birthdays, heartbreaks, passwords, casseroles, and late-night infomercials to sort through. So if it misplaces a detail or two, cut it some slack. Here's the miracle. The aging brain is still shockingly plastic. And no, I don't mean Tupperware. I mean neuroplastic. It can grow, adapt, rewire. Even now, even with your reading glasses on your head. And guess what Buddhists have been doing for over 2,600 years? Mind training. Yup. Long before scientists started hooking monks up to brain scanners, these old souls were sitting in caves and watching their thoughts go by like parade floats. Some thoughts were weird, some painful, some just boring, but they watched them all float on past without chasing any of them down with a broom. Let me tell you about Ravi. Ravi's 82, wears socks with sandals and smells faintly of eucalyptus. He used to read philosophy books just for fun, but life got loud. TV, grandkids, doctor visits, the never-ending grocery list of being human. Then one day, Ravi found a mindfulness circle at the senior center. Nothing fancy, no incense, no robes, no Sanskrit chants echoing off the walls. Just chairs, silence, and breath. Sit down, shut up, and breathe. That was the whole curriculum. At first, Ravi's mind was like a golden retriever let off leash at a squirrel convention. It bolted in every direction, but he stuck with it. Day by day, he noticed something subtle: space. Not in the room, inside. Between one thought and the next. Between the memory of loss and the sting of it. Between the name he couldn't remember and the shame he didn't need to feel. And suddenly, he wasn't drowning in thought anymore. He was watching the waves from the shore. Now the scientists, bless their hearts, have finally caught up with what monks knew long before MRI machines existed. Meditation sharpens attention, improves memory, calms emotional reactivity, and yes, grows gray matter. Which is great, because I think we've all lost some of it watching cable news. But more than science, meditation gives us something sacred in this overstimulated world. A place to rest. Mind clarity doesn't mean you'll remember everyone's birthday again. It means you won't panic when you forget. It means your thoughts won't drag you around by the collar like a misbehaving pet. It means when an old fear or shame comes knocking, you can open the door and say, "Ah, you again. Come in. Sit down. You don't scare me anymore." This garden of yours, it's still growing, still alive, still capable of blooming in surprising, quiet ways. Just remember to weed it now and then. Sit, breathe. Be kind to your wandering thoughts. They're not the enemy. They're just old stories looking for a little peace too. Pillar 5, don't wait for the phone to ring. Let me ask you something tender. When was the last time someone asked how your heart is doing? Not your cholesterol, not your errands, but your heart? Aging can be a bit like standing at a train station. One by one, people start getting off the train. Some move away, some get busy, and some just disappear into the mist. And before you know it, you look around and realize the platform is emptier than you thought it would be. Now I want to introduce you to Bernice. Bernice is 76, with sharp wit, thick glasses, and a soul like warm tea. She spent most of her life being everyone's person, the reliable daughter, the supportive wife, the ever-available mom. Her house was always full. Kids, casseroles, conversations, full. But then the kids got busy. Her husband passed. Her phone stopped ringing. One Saturday, she made a pot of coffee for two, out of habit. Sat across from an empty chair and thought, when did it get so quiet in here? Bernice wasn't alone in the world, but she was lonely, and that's not the same thing. The Buddha said nothing is to be clung to as I or mine. And sometimes that includes the roles we used to play. Mother, wife, worker, caregiver. When those roles fall away, who are we? We are still souls, still longing, still wired for connection. So Bernice, instead of waiting for someone to knock on her door, knocked on life's door. She joined a library book club. She hated the first book, but she loved the woman sitting next to her who whispered, "This one's awful, isn't it?" That woman became her new lunch buddy. A few weeks later, she joined a walking group. Slow walkers, mostly. A few with canes, but they laughed like teenagers. Then she started hosting tea and talk every other Thursday. No RSVP required. One woman brought banana bread. Another brought heartbreak. Bernice brought open arms. The loneliness didn't vanish overnight, but it softened. It got company. You see, we don't outgrow the need for friendship. We outgrow the illusion that it's supposed to just show up at our door. Friendship after 60 isn't about popularity. It's about companionship. About someone who remembers your stories, or at least listens to them like they're new. And in Buddhism, we have something called Sangha, spiritual community. Not a social club, not a group of people who like the same things, but a circle of hearts walking together toward truth. You don't have to sit in lotus pose to find your Sangha. Sometimes they're in the craft aisle at the dollar store, or sitting on a bench at the park, or waiting for someone, just like you, to say hi. If life has gone a little quiet around you, don't wait for the noise to return. Make some of your own. Kind noise, warm noise, human noise. Your soul wasn't meant to sit in silence forever. And remember, the people you seek, they're often seeking you too. But somebody has to go first. Let it be you. You'll be amazed at who answers the knock. Pillar 6, the strength no one sees. Let's be honest, life doesn't get easier after 60. It just changes costumes. It stops throwing career problems at you and starts handing out funerals, doctor's appointments, and phone calls that begin with, "Are you sitting down?" The outer storms may slow down, but the inner weather, that can get intense. And that's where emotional resilience comes in. I want to introduce you to Lila. Lila is 74, short, feisty, and walks like she's late for something, even when she's not. Her husband passed 2 years ago. 48 years of marriage, just like that. Gone. One moment he was reaching for the marmalade, the next, stillness. Grief came in like a fog, thick, quiet, and stubborn. Her kids were supportive at first, but then life called them back. She didn't blame them. She just didn't know what to do with all the silence. At first, she tried to outrun it, busied herself, cleaned things that didn't need cleaning, organized photos into albums she never opened again. But grief is clever. It waits until the to-do list is empty. Then it sits next to you on the couch. That's when Lila did something brave. She sat with it. She made tea for her sadness, journaled every morning, started walking alone at sunset where she could talk to the sky without anyone thinking she was nuts. And she found a little meditation group at the library, a circle of old souls just like her, sitting quietly, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, always breathing. And slowly, gently, her heart started growing back. Now, the Buddha never said life wouldn't hurt. He just taught us how not to make it hurt more than it needs to. He said, pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional, which is a nice way of saying, feel what's real, but don't let it drag you by the collar through every doorway. Leela didn't stop missing her husband. She didn't pretend everything was fine. She just learned how to carry the grief without it carrying her. That's emotional resilience. It's not being tough. It's not gritting your teeth and muscling through. It's the quiet courage to say, yes, this hurts, and yes, I can still love this day. It's giving yourself permission to feel everything without shame. The sadness, the fear, the guilt, even the relief that sometimes surprises you after a long goodbye. It's also learning how to soothe yourself. Not numb, not escape, but really soothe. Whether that's through breath, prayer, walks in nature, painting wildflowers, or listening to Billie Holiday on repeat, whatever keeps your heart soft. Because here's the truth. No one, not even the people who love you most, can walk through your inner storms for you. But they can walk beside you, and you can walk beside yourself. That's the real miracle. So if your heart has been heavy lately, please know there's nothing wrong with you. You're not too sensitive, you're not broken, you're just human. Still feeling, still alive. And that, my friend, is resilience. Pillar 7, bend, don't break. Let's be honest, most of us like change, as long as it doesn't involve us. We're okay with other people growing, moving, updating their iPhones and switching haircuts. But when life knocks on our door and says time to shift, we pretend we're not home. But life, it's relentless. It doesn't ask if you're ready. It just shows up with a suitcase and says, we live here now. I want to tell you about Clarence. Clarence is 79. Wore the same aftershave for 50 years, owned a flip phone until last year, and believed email was a passing trend. He loved routine. Coffee at 6, crossword by 6:30, same diner every Wednesday, same seat. Then one by one, things started to change. His best friend moved to Arizona. His diner closed, his doctor retired, and his knees, well, let's just say they weren't keeping up with his staircase anymore. Clarence found himself sitting in his recliner, watching reruns of shows he used to watch when he still had sideburns, thinking, is this all there is now? And then something odd happened. His granddaughter came to visit and showed him how to use video calls. At first, he said no. Then he said fine. Then he spent 2 hours on Zoom with a buddy he hadn't seen in 20 years, laughing like the war ended yesterday. So he leaned in. He got on a group chat, started watching YouTube tutorials on woodworking. He joined a virtual history club full of people who also typed too slowly. He even started ordering groceries online and said, you know what? This isn't bad. Now don't get me wrong, Clarence still misses the old ways, but he doesn't fear the new ones anymore. Because he realized something. The world wasn't leaving him behind. It was inviting him forward. In Buddhism, there's a beautiful phrase, anicca, impermanence. Everything changes, the seasons, our bodies, our memories, even our roles in the family. And when we resist that truth, we suffer. But when we soften into it, when we let go of needing things to stay the same, that's where grace lives. Adaptability isn't about being trendy or tech-savvy. It's about staying open, curious, willing to try. It's being able to say, this isn't what I expected, but let's see what happens. It's knowing how to pivot when your go-to routine disappears, or how to find new ways to connect when your old community scatters. It's the inner wisdom that says, I can belong here too, even in this new chapter. Clarence still wears the same aftershave. But now he teaches Zoom woodworking classes from his garage. His world didn't get smaller, it just changed shape. And you're not too old to change. You're not too old to learn something new, make a new friend, start a new tradition, or write a new story. Adaptability isn't about becoming someone else. It's about giving yourself permission to be who you already are, but in a new context, and maybe, just maybe, finding out that you like it more than you thought you would. Pillar 8. You're not done yet. You ever notice how, once you stop working, people start asking you less about who you are and more about what kind of supplements you're taking? It's strange. You spend decades building a life, raising kids, running businesses, organizing holiday dinners, mowing lawns, and then one day, poof, you're retired. Like a toaster oven someone put back in the cupboard. But the soul doesn't retire. Let me tell you about Maurice. Maurice is 71, used to work in the postal service. Woke up at 5:30 every morning for 40 years, rain, snow, shin splints, delivering mail with a whistle in his step. The guy was a walking zip code. And then, one morning, the alarm didn't go off, because there was no reason for it to. He'd retired. At first, it was wonderful. Long mornings, hot coffee, pajamas until noon. Then came the restlessness. He cleaned the gutters twice in 1 week, reorganized the spice cabinet alphabetically, sat on the porch watching squirrels fight over birdseed, and started picking favorites. That's when it hit him. I'm bored, and I'm disappearing. Now, the Buddha taught that our true nature isn't found in our job titles or our routines. It's in how we show up, with presence, with intention, with heart. Maurice wasn't missing work. He was missing purpose. So one afternoon, he wandered into the local middle school, the one his grandkids used to attend, asked if they needed any volunteers. They stuck him in the woodshop, figuring, how much damage can he do? Turns out Maurice had a gift, not just with tools, but with kids, especially the ones who didn't quite fit anywhere. He had time for them, and wisdom, and stories that made them laugh. Soon he had a little crew, Maurice's makers, they called themselves. And every week, they'd build birdhouses and bookends and dreams. His wife said he started whistling again. See, purpose isn't about changing the world. It's about staying connected to the part of you that's still alive. It's about waking up and having something to care about, something that asks for your attention, your compassion, your weird sense of humor. It doesn't matter what it is. Mentoring, painting, baking cookies for the food pantry, writing poetry that no one but your cat reads. The point is that purpose keeps your soul from going numb. And here's the kicker. Sometimes you don't find your purpose. It finds you, but only if you stay open, curious, willing to say yes to something a little outside your usual orbit. The Buddhists would say that purpose is like dharma, your path, your way of being in harmony with life. Not forced, not performative, just right. So if you've been feeling invisible lately, like your usefulness is fading, I want to tell you something. You're not done yet. You still matter. And the world, even in its chaos, is still waiting for something only you can give. Pick up that brush, join that club, write that letter, walk into that school. Even if your hands shake, even if your voice quivers, your soul will thank you for remembering it's still very much here. And so will someone else. So if you've made it this far, take a deep breath. Really, you've just walked through 8 pillars of wisdom for growing older, with strength, clarity, and an open heart. Let's remember them. You learned that giving is not just something you used to do. It's something that still gives you back. That money can't buy love, but it can buy peace of mind, and that matters. That your body may creak, but it still wants to carry you forward. That your mind, even now, can be tended like a garden, one quiet breath at a time. That you don't have to wait by the phone for connection. You can build it, cup of tea by cup of tea. That strength isn't just muscle. It's what holds you steady when the winds blow. That change isn't your enemy, it's your next teacher. And that you, yes you, still have purpose. You are not done yet. Now, here's your fortune cookie moment. The second half of life isn't about doing more. It's about becoming more of who you already are. And you, dear soul, are already wise, already worthy, already enough. If this video reminded you of something you'd forgotten or gave you something you didn't know you needed, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what spoke to you, or what you're still carrying, or just say hi. We actually read what you write. Like this video if it warmed your heart, and subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. Not because we're chasing numbers, because your support tells us, keep going. This matters. And if you know someone, maybe a parent, a friend, or even your future self who needs these words, go ahead and share it. You never know the difference it might make. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and don't forget, you're still blooming.